Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Camden and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And we've been going through some problem solving ourselves with some technical details, some technical issues on our end. On the other end, we got a guest that we've been playing tag with for I don't know how many months.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And then you and I tried to record this show while I was live on location in Texas at Bucky's in Waller,
Authentic.
Texas. Authentic Bucky's, yes, in Waller, Texas. It don't get more Texan than a town called Waller. That the biggest thing in Waller is a Bucky's, and you know, while we were talking about doing that show in Bucky's, I thought of one of the things I wanted to talk about. Just doing a family show today was or is growth, because Bucky's. There's a couple of Texas franchises that come to mind when I think of Bucky's is one of them. Bucky's isn't quite as old as the other one. The other one is Whataburger, and what Whataburger's done now. Needless to say, some things have changed at the Whataburger headquarters, because the Whataburger headquarters ain't the Whataburger headquarters anymore. And those of you who don't know, Whataburger is a Texas staple that started in the 50s. They're known for their classic orange and white branding and their A-frame, the old school A-frame building.
Yes, sir.
And what was it, 5-6 years ago, they were bought out by a restaurant company, because as a family-owned company, one of their parameters was they would only have family-owned franchises and only in Texas. Those were two things that they held to for 50 plus years, which is pretty amazing that they became what they are before they went national. So I just want to, when you start thinking about growth and these choices, I think the point of this is that just because you want to grow doesn't mean you have to change what your purpose is and what your values are.
And I think, talking about change inside of growth, that's one really interesting aspect of it. Because I think when we talk about growth, and it's like drawing the graph for your business. Like, we're just going to do this and it's all going to go great. And we're going to go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, and things are just going to keep going, and that's it. And we're going to deliver things the exact same way. When we anticipate the growth, we look at the good sides of the growth, but we don't usually take the time to anticipate the change that comes with that growth. You talk about what Whataburger has been able to do since they sold. I don't know the technicalities of if they sold or if they're still technically owners or what, but they went national. Some would say they sold out, but they went national with it, and they are expanding all these other places. You could say, I know my older brother would probably say that the quality might not be as good in Colorado as it is in Texas, and you got things like that, of course, you can point to, but also they've opened an insane amount of stores since that time. And it's kind of one of those things when you start looking at the growth, well, it's like, okay, what are you comfortable changing? You already talked about the one thing that you should be very uncomfortable changing and you should not change, which is your purpose and the purpose behind your business. But I think that you get into an interesting gray area once you start looking at real growth. It's like if we're talking a coaching business. And, I want to have one-on-one coaching. That's a great business model for me to work with those clients. If I want to help 1,000 people, all of a sudden that business model is not very good. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe we could do a 2-on-1 coaching or group coaching, and you can keep changing some variables. You're looking at Whataburger, and it's like, oh gosh, do all the potatoes need to come from, the McGregor farm in Texas? Okay, maybe, all right, well, we could get some potatoes from Idaho. And you start doing these kind of things, and the quality changes just a little bit, which, to some people might be the end of the game, but really, when you're looking at growth, that's just kind of naturally what's going to happen. You have to embrace the change and just kind of steer it, is the way I would look at it. And I want to throw that over to you, because when we talk about Green Berets, we always talk about thriving in chaos. And to me, the chaos of growth is a really interesting one, because there's going to be that change. Like, the growth is the growth and the change. I can't think of the right science word. I've been doing too much coaching rugby this morning, not science stuff. But the change is linked to the growth. They are inseparable in that way. You're going to
Mhm.
have change when you have growth. So then, how do you deal with the chaos of that growth?
Well, I think the foundation of it is, and you touched on this, is the principles. You know, what is the purpose of the organization? Because you have to have a purpose. Otherwise, what is everybody doing there? You don't have anything to tie the people together. So purpose is what ties that business together. It's what ties that tribe together. So that's number one. Number two is you have to have values, and you have to not go against these values. These values are some of the most important things that you can come up with, and how they should be your guide in everything you do. Who you hire, the type of person you hire, the type of business you do, the type of clients you work with, all those sort of things are judged by your values. And in your personal values are the things that guide your decisions. Whether you go, okay, value 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you make your decision, or you go, all right, let's do it this way. They're inherent to who you are. And if your personal values don't align with your organizational values, then that split, that difference, that dichotomy will cause a problem and make it a burden. The same thing goes with your personnel. If your team members, if their values do not align with the organization's values, not only will they never be happy, you will never be happy with them, because they will not do it the way that you want. As many times as you tell them, this is how I want it done, it still won't be quite right. It'll still be off. And that is why values are so important. And when we talk about growth, and I had this great conversation the other night at the what the heck, the EBV, Entrepreneur Boot Camp for Veterans at Texas A&M. Give them a shout out at the McFerrin Business Center for entrepreneurs. And she and her husband, I think it is, she and her husband have a landscaping business up in the Northeast. And she was talking to me about wanting to scale, because she refers to herself as an owner operator.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to get out of working in her business and start working on her business. So we started to talk. I said, well, what's your passion? She said, well, my passion is getting people outside and getting them to enjoy outside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So what's the purpose of the business? And then she circled back around to her passion, because she couldn't define her business.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, well, there's step one. You need to define your business. Now, step two is, guess what? You got to decide, you got to know what your values are. And this is where a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand what their own personal values are. Just because they've never written it down doesn't mean they don't have them. Everybody has them. But until you write them down, you don't know what they are. So I asked her, what are your values? And she just kind of stared at me for a minute or two. I said, okay, well, there's step two you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got some homework. When you go back home, you're going to write these things down, because nothing is real. We can talk about them all day long, about being passionate about being out, going outside and helping other people get outside and enjoy and have reasons to enjoy being outside. But until you write that stuff down, it ain't real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you confirm it. And that's when you confirm what truly are your values. And that's what you have to make growth successful, because otherwise you lose who you are.
Mm-hmm. I think I want to drill down a little bit on that because I think there's a really good example of it that you have a lot of experience with, which is talking about an operation with special forces and moving forward towards a mission. Because I think and we've talked about it off the show, several times, but there's this really interesting thing of, it's like, you understand a target, to put it into rugby terms. I know I want to score a try, but there's a million ways we can get there. And you guys understand that, plan all these different variables, and you're somehow functioning inside of a bunch of different decision spectrums, but moving forward with confidence the entire time. And it goes back to what you're saying there of having those values, having that purpose, having the understanding of the mission and all those different aspects. Could you talk about how having that big picture understanding bleeds into those like individual decisions. Because the reason I want to go to that mission example is, to me, that like development of the mission is very similar to the growth of the business. You know where you're working towards, and a bunch of shit's going to happen along the way. Like, they're similar in that context. Could you talk a little on that?
Yeah, well, it's so what happens first off is there's a set of values that are created unbeknownst to us at the time, but there's a set of values that are created from going through everything we've gone through. So, we used to refer to Green Berets as triple volunteers because you volunteer for the Army, you volunteer for airborne school, and you volunteer to go to Green Beret training, become a Green Beret. So that right there establishes a set of principles and mindset and values, because those principles are the another way of really saying values. So it establishes that mindset which comes from the values. So we have a common path which weeds out people who don't believe in that path, don't believe in that effort. And I think that's one of the big pieces of it. So everybody in that group, that team, that operational detachment alpha, all have gone through that. And then they've all gone through training together. So now they've worked as individuals together and brought their expertise into the organization to create that operational detachment alpha, that little SF tribe, if you will. And then they get assigned a mission. And that is, okay, now we're going to take all our skills that we've done and all our interactions that we've done in preparation and training, and we're going to achieve something greater than ourselves. So we've already committed to something greater than ourselves in the organization itself. Now we're going to add to that and want to accomplish that mission because it serves a greater purpose. And because of that understanding, that's why understanding the mission statement, and I'm going to step out of this little story for just a second, because this has come up several times in the last several weeks with different people from all walks of life. A mission statement has an end state. A purpose is fulfilled. So as a Green Beret, we had a purpose to free the oppressed, the oppresso liber. That is still the purpose of Green Berets, free the oppressed. But we would get assigned missions each, depending on how things were going. Our mission assignments enabled us to fulfill our purpose of freeing the oppressed. So those missions, each of those individual missions would have a completion, an outcome, an end state we would refer to, meaning, okay, now I know what I've done. I got to go kill a bad guy. I've got to go capture a bad guy. I've got to go create a force, a guerrilla force that will overthrow an evil empire, evil dictator, or whatever. But all of those things fall under the umbrella of to free the oppressed.
Yeah, and then I think that's what's interesting is that you can see how those different details, as you zoom in more and more to the development of the mission, to the growth of the business, that's where you get each of those individual decisions on things. Going back to like our Whataburger example, it could be part of the passion. It could be your passion that you want to work with the same farmer the whole time for your potatoes. Take my example from earlier. But your purpose is to sell really good burgers and good fries to as many people as possible and spread the love of Whataburger, right? Well, do you need the same fries from the same farmer in order to do that? Well, not necessarily. And you get into this little bit of calculation to where there's no right answer most of the time. You are making a choice to sacrifice quality and consistency by choosing a different farmer and spreading out your potato input, right? You are changing that, but you're also amplifying your effect. And that's the kind of dance that you have to do when it comes into growth. As this develops, are you going to stick to your original plan so much that you limit your growth and you say, no, I want to stay right in here and just affect this area? Or are you really looking at that growth in a way where it's kind of open-ended? Because I think that's, obviously, project for this episode, that's an area I wanted to discuss a lot, which is the open-endedness of growth. like we look at it again as that kind of linear, like it's drawn in on a graph. Look at this, what we can do. This is what growth is. But that growth gets so different. It's like you talk to an entrepreneur, early stage entrepreneur. You talk to them about growth. They don't think that they're going to lose their job in 10 years because they're not a great CEO. They're much better startup guy. Like they don't think about that part. That's not part of their growth to them. They just think it's going to constantly build up. And I think you have to be open to those other aspects and have the flexibility and agility to deal with it as you're moving forward. To me, I think really it all goes back to that agility, right?
Oh yeah, and where do you get agility? Agility is the only you get agility. Let's think about the physical aspect of agility, right? Training, sports. That's where I first learned about agility. You use the term agility drills, right?
Yeah.
And there's various things of hopping on one foot, jumping up and down, running up a hill backwards, carrying your friends. That are all agility things that are really what does that mean? So if we break down agility, what does it mean? It means that I am agile. Okay. And what does agile mean? It means that I can react and shift. I'm physically capable of doing multiple things in multiple positions in multiple ways. And the word, when we start to say agility, not only am I physically capable, but I'm mentally capable, both in a sports situation and in a business situation. And I think that's one.
I just want to add on that, just talk about agility. I'm stuck in the rugby context. Sorry, y'all. It's Saturday's rugby day when we're recording. But you look at like a sidestep. That's agility, right? How quickly can you sidestep? Well, if you can't time the sidestep, if you're not smart enough to time it, then it doesn't work. The agility comes from being able to actually apply the things that you're learning.
Yeah, exactly. That is how you take what you learn and you apply it when you need to apply it. So the opposite of agility is I can only go forward in this direction, right? This is the only thing I can do is this direction, and I can only walk straight, and I can only walk on a certain type of terrain, because guess what? Even walking, going for a walk on a loop around the neighborhood requires different terrain, and that's a bit of agility. It's not agility like when everybody thinks about it, agility of like the NFL player or basketball player or rugby player. It's not that kind of agility, but it's still agility. You're still more agile than somebody who cannot go out and walk on uneven ground. And if you think about that in business, how do you make yourself more agile in business? And that's the capability of the people, the personnel in your team, in your tribe. What can they do? How do they react? How do they handle problems? Can they see something and say, I got this, I can handle this? Or do they when they run into like my good friend Jeffrey in Uganda, lives in Kampala, lives in Kampala. Jeffrey, I love you, man, but you gave me one of the greatest business lessons and understanding of a larger problem actually in the world, in certain parts of the world, and that was Jeffrey ran into an impediment that wasn't really that big of an impediment. It's, hey, we need a 300 gallon per minute water pump, blah blah blah, some sort of gas power, blah blah blah. Here's the specifics of this pump we need. Jeffrey goes to the store that's supposed to have them, usually has something like that, and they don't have it. And he just comes back home without a pump. He doesn't say, well, can you order it? When will it be here? What's a good alternative? Because, Mr. Pump Store owner, you're the expert on these kind of pumps. Is there an alternative that you might have in stock? And it could also have been, I just thought of this, but it could also have been, how urgent was it? Jeffrey, we have to have something to fix this by tonight, sort of thing. Or was it something that we could wait? But either way, when he hit that, he was not agile enough to say, oh, what are some other options? We talked. I talked with like my buddy Scott the other day about divergent thinking, and I think agility, mental agility, or agility in business, is divergent thinking. Uh, and what is so divergent thinking is
Mhm.
what else can it be? It's the brick
Yeah.
test,
Yeah.
right? And the more I think about the brick test, the more I love it because it's, well, what kind of brick? If it's this kind of brick, it can do this. If it's this kind of brick, it can do that. Nobody said it's the standard red solid brick. I'm pointing out to the sidewalk, that is 9 inches by 2.5 inches by 4 inches or
Mhm.
3.5 inches, something like that.
And
Whatever that standard brick size. Nobody said is that. It says, what can you do with a brick? That's agility. That's mental
yeah.
agility. That's divergent thinking.
I've been thinking to myself, I wonder if physical agility helps to train mental agility. Because, it's like physical toughness helps with mental toughness quite a bit because you go through something, you get experience that. I'm wondering how much some speed and agility drills might help your mental agility. I'll have to run some experiments on that just to see. But I think the interesting thing there is that it's like, okay, like how can we implement this? Talking about the brick test there, makes me think to rugby, one of the simple rules that I love, and really you can apply this anywhere, any sort of coaching leadership role, but it's about keeping things open-ended in order to pull questions out of people because you don't want them to look for rules. You want them to ask questions and try to figure out where those rules are. A game that comes to mind is, I think we played this back with the Grizzlies back in high school, Dad, but I know I do it a lot with Gage. Ultimate Rugby. It's like ultimate frisbee, ultimate football, whatever you want to call it. You got a little triangle you're trying to touch the ball into, and you say, okay, you touch the ball into that triangle. This team's trying to go to this triangle. That's it, and you can't run with the ball. And that's the only rules I ever tell them. And then they go, oh, well, is there out of bounds? No, there's not out of bounds. There's not this. And there's all these other things that I'm not giving them because I want them to look for those. And I want them to find those different areas. And you can do the same kind of thing inside of your business. It's the equivalent of in coaching, rugby coaching, I was taught it as pushing answers versus pulling answers. You want to pull answers out of people. You want to leave things open to let people have that little bit of that little dose of chaos so they can feel that agility a little bit. And I think the other aspect of it goes into, and I think this is the same thing. Correct me if I'm off on this. If not, I think it goes hand in hand. But the processes is what it comes back to. When you start looking at the ability to be flexible as you're growing, as things are progressing and things get more and more chaotic as things go, you're further and further away from what the original plan was. It goes back to those individual mechanisms inside of the processes and how you're going to make those choices. It's the rugby example of every little thing is what builds up to the end goal, right? It's not every tackle is it. That's it. Game over. Like football, play stops. We're done. High five. That's it. It's a very, very, very small part of the game, but it's each one of those individual processes of making the tackle, stealing the ball back, passing it out, crashing it. All of those little things just keep building and building and building. And when you focus on the processes, you're able to be flexible. You're like, okay, hey, we're going to go to the left here. Actually, looks like we should go right. That's a simple change. But if you try to script everything, like a lot of businesses try to do, you try to write out that business plan. You say, hey, Otis, here's the deal. I need you to call these 5 people. I need you to sell them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You call that fifth person before you call the fourth person, we got a problem with that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I give you that rigid area to work in? And that's really, I think, the big problem when we start looking at growth inside of business and the leadership aspect of leading through growth and leading through that chaos is in a small business in a tight knit group, you can have that rigid plan. Everything comes back to me, Dad. If you have a podcast question, I want to hear it, and I'm going to be the one who answers it. That works with us too, right? That works with us. When we had Norman as a producer, we got Janine producing. That works because it's a very, very small group. I say everything runs through me, it works. We got 10 people, that stops working. And what happens is those bad leadership choices, those bad management choices might be a better way to put it, they work when it's smaller, but they get exposed as things go on. And so that's a really important piece as the leader to try to force those things, force those flexible things early on. I was out with Engage this morning. I don't talk to them that different than I talk to the U of A boys because I'm teaching them the same way of thinking. I don't say fuck or shit as much to the little kids at all. But it's besides that, I'm trying to talk to them the exact same way. So I want them to think the same way. We're trying to build an identity in the way that they think so that when they face these decisions, they can choose the right way to move forward inside of that process. We don't want it to be rigid. I want to throw that back over to you, talking about that rigidity. What's another way that you think you can combat that rigidity early on so that it doesn't become a bad habit that kills you down the road?
I think it's allowing the freedom of choice and the freedom of the consequences of choices. Now, when we say consequences, what if everybody thinks, oh, that's bad, right? There's going to be consequences there, Camden, if you do this. Well, yeah, that's one way of thinking about it, but there's also consequences can be positive, right? We've always associated it with the negative aspects of consequences, but truly consequences can be positive also. So what are those positive consequences or negative? What are those lessons so that I can learn? You know, one of my favorite techniques that I developed with when I was coaching the boys high school club, the Grizzlies. I don't know why I was beating around the bush so much on what it was our film sessions. And when we'd watch the film session, and I'd stop the film and say, okay, Tug, what were you thinking here? Why did you make this decision to go this way or to do X, whatever it was, in this exact moment? And we've got the big screen up. Everybody's there. He's looking at it. It's jarring his memory of what was happening in that moment. And it's okay. Why do you think that? All right, well, coach, I saw this and I was thinking I could do this. Okay, well, looking at this situation, Tug, what other options might be there? And he might struggle a little bit, but that's when we bring the rest of the team in also. Oh, well, Tug, I was right here. Look at the picture. Look at the video. There I am, Tug. Oh, I didn't see you. So what does that mean, Tug? Oh, well, next time, coach, maybe I need to do a quick left, right. So what is that doing? That's teaching him what other options and seeing it. It's not, Tug, you blooming idiot. What'd you do that with the ball for? You screwed it up. You turned over the ball. They scored off of that and we lost the match. That's not how you teach it. That's not how you show somebody to be, have mental agility, to have the ability to make their own choices, to grow, that personal growth. And that's what you have to do in your business too.
Yeah.
You have to do that same sort of thing in your business. You have to give them opportunities to learn. You have to teach them how to lead. You have to set them up for success, let them screw it up, and then let them learn from it. Help them learn from that time that they made the choice that maybe they didn't do the pricing right on a bid, or maybe they said, nah, sorry, Mr. Customer, we can't do that. When maybe you really could have if you thought about it differently, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing is because it's like the cop out way of leading is to provide like binary answers for that kind of stuff. To kind of, start wrapping us up a little bit here, Dan. But like if I'm looking at something, you're talking about, can we do this for the client? Yes, no. Simple. That's a very easy way for me to take something and hand it off to somebody else. But it's also a cop out. I'm not leading at that point. I'm handing somebody something for a binary choice and they're going to say A, B, and that's it. The real leadership is trusting that chaos a little bit of, well, what do you think? Every question you were asking in that hypothetical with Tug, which it happened on, I've been in one of those film sessions. The hypotheticals you're asking are always open ended. You're always giving them multiple things to look at because you know that nothing is actually going to be that binary. You might have a specific offering, and it's if they want this thing, it's A, yes, I can do it, or B, no, we can't do it. But then there's some gray area there. And as a leader, you have to become comfortable with that gray area. To take another rugby example, at last night's training, there was a ball that happened, and we're balling it in towards the try zone. And I had one of my players came over and said, Coach, do you want me to hit that? And he wanted a binary answer, yes or no. I walked over and I said, well, that's the thing. If you hit that and we stop it, then it's good. But if you hit that and then you create a gap over here and they score there, well, then you're wrong. Kind of like the whole thing you see in the hockey a lot, like this stupid shots. But it's like, well, it ain't coach. It's like, well, shoot, and they go in. So you're right. And that's exactly how it works because there's always a gray area that comes with it. It's never a binary choice. And I think that's the hard thing as a leader is getting comfortable with that gray area, being comfortable giving them that gray area. It's like that player I was talking to yesterday. At no point did I say, don't make the wrong choice. I said, here are your two choices. Here are the possible outcomes from those choices. That's it. Know that if you do this and you are wrong, this bad thing will happen. That's it. That's all he needs to know because he doesn't want the bad thing to happen. Go back to your sales example, right? If they know they want to bring in clients and they know they want to fulfill for clients, right? If you give them that gray area of like, well, that they want coaching, but they want me to fly out in person and do all this. Okay, that's too much. I can't do that. I thought about it personally. I cannot do that. But it's, oh, they want a little extra. They wanted this. They wanted that. Something I could do. Well, then I can make the choice to go then fulfill it for that client. And you give them that gray area. That's one where, again, going back to the leadership responsibility and why it's so stressful, why we drift towards those binary options, because I might make a choice in that sales call, Dad, where I offer something to that client that we probably shouldn't have offered. Oh, that was too much. You know, the flying out example. Like, gosh, I'm sorry, Dad. I thought we had the budget. I could fly out to meet them every week, and I thought it worked. Sorry, but I made the choice, and that's the only way you can learn from it is actually having that choice in front of you and go make it. Right? You, as the leader in that example, have to be comfortable with the fact that I might make the wrong choice. That's okay, because if you never take off the barriers on the outside, those parameters, if you never take those off, then they're only ever going to function in there. Going back to the growth side of it, and then I'll let you go down. Sorry. Going back to the growth side of it, if you keep those parameters on the entire time, forcing those binary decisions, you get a ridiculous spectrum of binary choices that nobody wants to work in. It's no fun, no personal accountability, no personal room for growth, no personal decision. There's none of that stuff that makes people want to go to their job. It just becomes this binary thing that you can get a freaking AI to do. And that's why the leadership is that ultimate human component to help give those gray areas, be comfortable with people making the wrong choice inside of that gray
area. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's as a leader, you have to realize that there's, more than one way to skin the cat. Mm-hmm. There are multiple ways, and probably even infinite ways to get the outcome that you want. Yep. That's why clarity in the outcome is so important. And as a leader, enabling your team to make the choice and the paths that they want to take in order to achieve that outcome. Now, and talking about outcome, it always leads me to what's the outcome of our show is what we learn. So, yes, I was a Green Beret for a very long time, and I've thought about those three words many, many times in my career and beyond it, the oppresso liber. But I never thought about it the way it occurred to me today as we were talking about. That is the purpose of the Green Berets. It's not the mission, it's the purpose of being a Green Beret is to free the oppressed, the oppresso liber. And which I think is an interesting way of looking at it. And I think that's, for me, it's one of those, wow, I've never thought about it that way. And it makes perfect sense. Camden, about you, what'd you learn?
I'm just going to add on yours, Dad. That's why all of y'all, you Green Berets, think of Scott Kinder, all the friends of the show, those different guys, that's why they all do what they do now. If it was a mission, then they would have completed the mission and they would be back home and they'd have their feet up on the beach somewhere. But that's not the mission, that's the purpose. And so I think that's spot on. And I think that's a very, very wise way to try to look at things. For me, honestly, the big question I keep thinking is, does physical agility drive mental agility? I think there's something really interesting with that, I'm going to be honest. But no, more so, I think it's the fact that when you look at growth, it really comes from those gray areas. And if you're if you're a bad manager and you put everybody in that binary choice to where they have to choose A or B every single time, then you're never going to get C or D. And C might be wrong, but D might be the secret to your business's growth. And that's really the reality of it. It's that I think the term, to get philosophical for a second, I think the term is radical freedom. That it's like every choice you make is basically splintered off into millions of other choices. Every single choice we're making. Well, that goes in your business too. That C or D, that C could be the thing that makes your business, could be the thing that kills the business. That's just the reality of life. And you have to open up that bag of worms a little bit in order to find the things that are going to move you forward. Because if you just keep it tight, then you're never going to have that agility, you're never going to have that flexibility to find those ways to innovate, which is what we all say we want as leaders. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to grow. It's I think talking in circles a little bit there, but because the logic comes back around, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it made me think when we're talking about growth and values and purpose, it made me think of this one Stoic quote by Marcus Aurelius: never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. That's a mantra to put up on the mantelpiece there when you start talking about scaling your business.
Mm-hmm.
So
is the purpose the burgers or the where you get the potatoes from? Go back to our Whataburger example, right? You got to know what your purpose is. Otherwise, you're going to be so married to potatoes, you ain't going to grow your business.
Exactly. All right, Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.